Great, thank you very much. And I'd like to say thank you, Ross, for inviting me to contribute to your workshop. I'm really sorry I can't be with you in person today, despite the kind invitation, and also that I haven't been able to join for the rest of the presentation. It's just a very busy time for us at the moment, and tackling COVID cases at home as well, so a bit all over the place. But hopefully this presentation will make up for us and will be of interest to you as well. So maybe next slide, please. I just want to introduce you to Retrokit. So we are a, let's say, clean tech startup based in West Cork, so not too far away from where you are, about an hour along the coastline. And we set up Retrokit in 2020 on the back of a, let's say, 2-year research and development project funded by ACEI and building on about 25 years of experience within the team. In fact, collectively, it's several decades, but myself personally, I've been involved in sustainable energy for quite a long time. And through that practice, realized that we were at a point where we had a combination of a lot of data available and also a need to, let's say, support home energy upgrades at a much bigger scale than had been done so far, and also going much deeper when in terms of energy renovation in housing. And so decision making became a significant issue in terms of the scale of the investment required, and therefore having tools like Retrokit helping that the processes and the decision making was increasingly important. So we embarked on a project which is now maturing and reaching commercialization with a mission to help the sector overall upscale energy renovation and using innovation and digital solutions to help with climate action and tackling fuel poverty across Europe. I should obviously mention the fact that we've been supported by a number of key stakeholders in Ireland in terms of public bodies along the way, and our local enterprise office has been really instrumental in our development from that point of view, and Enterprise Ireland directly and indirectly has been supporting us too. And we got a few awards along the way. I'm glad to mention we were shortlisted for the Irish Times Innovation Award in 2020, and we're one of 1,000 efficient solutions for climate action under the Solar Impulse Foundation, which is a global movement. Next slide, please. Overall, possibly, I'm sure you've heard these figures in previous presentation, but maybe to frame the discussion around the scale of the issue, the challenge, and the opportunities. The renovation studies underlying, the Green Deal and the policy development at European level have identified the fact that 75% of European homes have a poor energy performance and need upgrade. And that the housing sector is a very significant part of our climate action requirement, in that 20% of the overall greenhouse gas emissions in Europe are linked to the residential sector. And the other key aspect of that, which I think is the key focus for your workshop, is fuel poverty is a massive problem. About 16% of European households are suffering from fuel poverty. That, if I'm correct, is about 160 million people who cannot pay their bills, or have problems paying their bills, or have problems keeping their homes comfortable. And that problem is only being exacerbated with the current crisis in terms of energy costs. And so that 60% figure is likely to be far exceeded currently. So to tackle all these issues, energy upgrade of homes is a fundamental requirement, and we'll need to upgrade 146 million homes within the next 30 years if we want to achieve climate neutrality. That's about 90,000 homes being upgraded to a deep level of retrofit every week for the next 30 years. So it's a massive endeavor, and from our point of view, also a massive opportunity for growth in terms of employment, in terms of obviously tackling those big issues, but also in terms of investments and business opportunities. So I'd like to move on to the next slide. Thank you. If we zoom in on our little country, energy upgrade of homes is not a new thing. It's been happening for many, many years under different funding schemes by SEI and the department, but there's a very significant step change currently happening. And that's on the back of a strong political commitment and policy framework that's been put in place over the last maybe 2 years with the Climate Action Plan, the program for government, and different policy documents that are, increasingly, or let's say iteratively, reinforced the framework. And we're at the point now where we're moving to action. And a lot of money has been pushed on the table by government. We have a commitment of 8 billion euros in public expenditure to be spent this decade under the National Development Plan. About 50% of that will be really dedicated to tackle fuel poverty under the Warm Home Scheme, which provides 100% funding for households, let's say in the private housing sector that are experiencing fuel poverty, generally speaking. So that's funding has been allocated and will deliver about 235,000 homes upgrades by 2030. And for this year, there's 109 million euros committed. The more recent program is the National Home Energy Upgrade Scheme, which is going to be funded at the 4 billion euros. Again by 2030, and that's to tackle private housing, and that's the level of funding will be for those who can afford 50%, and the grants have been commoditized. I won't go into detail of that, but basically the system will be simplified from the different pilots that have happened before, and more straightforward, easier to understand for homeowners. But the key aspect of that is that the central delivery model, let's say, put forward by the government will be the one-stop shops. And I'll explain in a moment what that means and what that one-stop shop do. But the idea is to have a hassle-free process for homeowners to complete deep energy retrofits. And that should deliver in the region of 160,000 home upgrades by the end of this decade again. So overall, we have about commitment for upgrading 400,000 homes, and we anticipate that another 100,000 upgrades will be taking place in the social housing sector, and in particular among the local authorities' housing stock. In total, that will lead to an investment of about 25 billion euros between the 8 billion I've mentioned before from public funding, and the balance will be privately funded, and that's a massive opportunity in terms of financial bodies providing adequate solutions for homeowners in that space. Next slide, please. So I've mentioned earlier the one-stop shop model, which is a clear departure from what's been, let's say, the model until recently, whereby the homeowners had to do pretty much everything, and had to deal with designers, contractors, funding authorities, be our assessors, get their funds organized themselves, which is a big burden from, let's say, the skills that requires the time commitment and the costs. And also the lack of integration in the process can also lead to suboptimal quality as well. the model that's put forward now is the one-stop shop model, whereby that entity takes ownership of the delivery of the project pretty much from start to finish, and provide a turnkey solution to the homeowner in a single point of contact between the different stakeholders, again, the contractors, the funding authority, let's say the BR assessors, the engineers, the designer, and also as a role to provide quality control and to, let's say, educate and help support the homeowner along the journey, and removing the hassle of coordinating the projects, managing the contractors individually, and also another part of the puzzle is to bring that financial package together. So that's starting to emerge now, where there's consortium, one-stop shop consortium include financial bodies, for example, ANPOS together with SSE Electricity, and a key aspect of that is to develop a plan, a tailored plan for the dwelling, for the homeowner, with all the technical assessment required, the recipe if you want to achieve the necessary targets. In Ireland, we are aiming to achieve a B2 across the board, and a financial plan that comes with that in terms of grant, in terms of energy credits, and private finance as well from banks or credit unions, etc. Next slide, please. So how is Retrokit positioning itself in supporting the work of One Stop Shop? So we've been developing Retrokit over the last, let's say, 5 years, initially targeting the social housing sector, where for us the key thing was to achieve scale and to work with what we'd call project aggregators. Looking at the evolution of the marketplace and the demand from the home energy upgrade sector, and through ongoing discussions, we've then realized actually Retrokit is a platform that could be adapted to meet their requirements as well, i.e., the requirements of the one-stop shop. So over the last year, we've been adapting our platform to deliver a number of functionalities, if you want. The first one is to provide a data management system. You'll see the next slide that the process is quite let's say, an extensive one. There's a lot of different steps, there's a lot of different stakeholders, and flowing the right data from start to finish to support decision making, to support delivery of projects, the planning of projects, is very important. So from that point of view, having a platform that helps the data flow and managing that data from start to finish, and that's secure, obviously, is very important. The other aspect is that we developed let's say, a modeling tool that helps the one-stop shop or possibly homeowners to model a range of different options, what we call scenarios of energy upgrade, and are then presented with a series of KPIs that helps them understand what's best for that particular dwelling, what are the costs, what are the measures required, and what are the grants available, etc. So, it all combines with the data management system, very powerful analytics that allows that to do extremely quickly at individual dwelling level, but also at whole stock level. So in the case of a social housing body like Cork City Council, for example, who's one of our early adopters, where they're dealing with 8,000, 10,000 housing units, having the ability to do this kind of modeling rapidly across the whole housing stock and develop a roadmap for the housing stock is very useful. And in the context of one-stop shop, equally, at the end of this year, they'll have in their pipeline possibly several thousands of homes. So, it helps them manage that scale of data and volume of projects much easier than had been the case so far. We've also developed a user interface that helps, make decisions, get the right information quickly, in a kind of user-friendly way that allows, to understand and make decisions as, let's say, seamlessly as possible. There's also a mapping application built in Retrokit, whereby all the dwellings within the database are geolocated, and that allows housing authorities or one-stop shop to start planning project on an area base. So it might be, let's say, next year we want to focus on homes in Bishopstown, for example, and the map allows you to select the homes within that area and to create a project out of that selection, and then move forward with the project development from there. Whereby there is a significant improvements in productivity when that happens, and that's coordinated at the geographical level. And for a one-stop shop, it might be, the pipeline is building up, and we realize with clients within the same locality, the map is very useful to visualize that, to understand that, and gather the data required at that level to start the process. Our platform is hosted here in Ireland on Amazon servers, who are powerful, very secure, and it's an online application, so it's cloud-based and always accessible. Next slide, please. So that's just to, as I said earlier, to illustrate the process in a relatively linear way, but it kind of shows the extent of the level of interactions that need to happen between the different stakeholders, and how data needs to flow from one step to the next, so that projects can be delivered efficiently and achieving quality in the process. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of how effectively Retrokit works. It's a few kind of user interface screenshots, if you want, of how the platform has evolved to service the needs of one-stop shops in particular. So on the top left side, we start with the data acquisition process. And here in Ireland, BR data, so energy performance certificate data, is hosted on a national administration system managed by SEI. And Retrokit is a trusted partner whereby we can use SEI's API to retrieve that data and bring that data into Retrokit's platform, and from where we start building a database of the house, the dwellings, and the housing stock we'll be dealing with. So within that database, we've got all the data that pertains to the dwellings from an energy performance point of view, covering the fabric, the energy systems, and the associated KPIs in terms of energy efficiency, renewable energy, etc. As I mentioned to you, we have a map that is very useful to help with managing projects on an area basis, and also to organize projects, at the local level. Once the data is in, first of all, we've got a snapshot of the current situation of every dwelling from what we call the baseline point of view, and then we can start the modeling. So we can model any kind of scenario under the sun effectively. There's about 56 different energy retrofit measures built in our database, and you can build a scenario by simply selecting a range of measures with a number of default scenarios between a shallow or medium or a deep retrofit. And once that scenario is selected and applied, the modeling very quickly gives you feedback as to the impact of that scenario through a series of KPIs covering, let's say, the BR rating, covering the energy consumption, the energy expenditure, the level of renewable energy supply, the CO2 emissions, and so on. So we see there's a number of approximately 6-7 KPIs we present straight away to the user. And again, we can compare a range of scenarios very quickly and start optimizing what the right measure should be for a given dwelling. For example, if the purpose is to decarbonize, that might push you in a certain direction in terms of deciding what measures to apply. If it's about tackling fuel poverty first of all and reducing energy costs, that might be a different criteria and a different approach in the modeling and the optimization process. And Retrokit will help you define your priorities, your constraints in terms of budget, and then deliver what's the best option to achieve the required targets typically in Ireland, it'd be to achieve a B2 to comply with the funding requirements. And once a scenario has been identified as being the optimal one, the next step is to translate that into, let's say, an action plan for the homeowner, or for that matter, for the local authority or the social housing body, maybe at a bigger scale. And that might be a 10-year renovation plan for the local authority, for example. But if we keep the focus on the individual homeowner in the context of the one-stop shop business model, then we produce what we call a home energy upgrade plan, which we hope, and the proof will be in the pudding, but is, let's say, accessible and easy to understand, but very factual and evidence-based for the homeowner to start making decisions. Yes, that's what I want, or maybe I'd like something a bit different. And then there's a level of interaction that might happen between the one-stop shop and the homeowner at that stage. But once the final, let's say, proposal and plan is adopted, then that can be translated into a contract. And on the left-hand side of the screen, we can also generate specifications for the project that might go towards the procurement process with a panel of contractors. So that's the range of solutions we have currently deployed, and we're piloting with a number of one-stop shops that are emerging from the launch of the program by CEI. Next slide, please. It's worth mentioning that we're constantly experimenting, and we've been working very closely with a number of community organizations working at a local level towards, let's say, developing their own one-stop shop. And the kind of solutions we've developed and implemented with them include energy master plans that might be a strategic plan for a local area, a town, a village, a city in some cases, as to how can we upgrade the housing stock at that scale, right? So it's more like from a planning perspective. We've also delivered energy clinics whereby homeowners can call us. Typically, we do that online, and we spend an hour with them answering their questions, guiding them, providing feedback, advice, and then following up with information. We also work with BR assessors and energy auditors who use Retrokit to provide their services to homeowners and to one-stop shops increasingly. And a key deliverable in that context is the home energy upgrade plans, as I've described them earlier. Next slide, please. How am I doing on time, Rose? Am I okay?
No, you're okay.
Yeah, great. So, Rose, you sent me a list of bullet points as to maybe points wanted me to address in the context of looking at Retrokit as a good practice, and I think we're a good practice in the fight against food poverty. So maybe a few pointers in that regard. Well, first and foremost, we're dealing here with a massive investment. At Irish scale, it's 9 billion euros. That's a lot of money. That will be invested in our homes and that will be dedicated to fuel poverty by 2030. So with Retrokit, we have a tool that helps evidence-based decision-making and planning in optimizing that investment to make sure we deliver best results out of the process. Secondly, there is within the program mentioned before, that should deliver 235,000 fuel poor homes upgrades by 2030. So the scale is enormous. And we believe digital solutions will be very instrumental in achieving that scale by improving productivity, reducing costs, and overall helping with governance. As I mentioned earlier, it's a massive public investment in our housing infrastructure. And it's very important that we deliver impact, and quality is a very important issue from that point of view. And again, by offering, let's say, data and intelligence, Retrokit will help underlie good governance processes, monitoring what happens in the housing stock, and also managing the quality of those projects. And because Retrokit can talk to other applications, in particular with SEI systems around the grant management, we can help the sector really flow and share the required information to deliver, to help with delivering that impact. You also asked me, what's the costs of all that, and in our case, building infrastructure has been a long-term project. I think we've started really the process about 5 years ago, but the intensive development has been happening over the last 4 years. I won't mention figures, but it certainly runs in several hundred thousands of euros of investment in financial resources and human resources. And so, it's a big endeavor at any scale. But we believe it's well worth doing, and there is very clear signs now that hopefully that investment is going to pay for us, but more importantly for our clients. Next slide, please. So again, in terms of evidence of success, for us, there's different, let's say, markers in that regard. The first one is that, public funding bodies like Enterprise Ireland, like our LEO, SCIs have invested in us. They've provided funding to get us where we are, and that's been very important and a strong validation of what we want to achieve. And also, we are starting to demonstrate good market fits with early adopters. Again, Cork City Council and Cork County Council adopted Retrokit from the start and have been extremely supportive in us designing, developing, testing, and deploying our solutions, and supporting us with income as well. And at this stage, having diversified Retrokit to address the needs of different market segments, we're starting to get clients in all these segments. So for us, that's a key validation. The challenges and how we overcome them, keeping the show on the road is a constant challenge in terms of cash flow, importantly, and again, the support we've received is very important, but also really focusing on rapid commercialization. So understanding that, let's develop solutions now, doesn't have to be perfect, let's deploy them, let's learn from that and keep the show moving. Let's use what we have to start generating revenue. It's been very important in balancing the books. And for me personally, but also for many members in the team, we've kind of moved from being consultants to becoming tech entrepreneurs. So there's been a steep learning curve in that regard, and kind of change of mindset in many ways, and training, mentoring, and learning by doing it has been very important in that regard. And for us, it's also about making sure that what we're doing is what our clients want and need. And so very much from the start, we applied a co-design approach to what we're doing. We're constantly listening to our clients. So my job is partly to sell Retrokit, but really my approach in doing that is really to try and listen to what our clients' problems are, their pain points, and to share with them and understand from them how we can help them. And then the development process follows that through rapid, minimal viable product development cycles, where we can deploy those solutions, learn from it, and constantly improve in the process. In terms of replication to other regions, there's a number of pointers in that regard. First of all, Retrokit complies with the European directives that are relevant in terms of the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive and the Energy Efficiency Directive, and all the, let's say, standards that underlie the implementation of those directives. And so, and that would be the case across Europe in terms of calculation methodologies and data underlying the Energy Performance Certificate system. And so translating and adapting Retrokit to other markets in Europe is something that is highly achievable, and that we hope to start doing in the near future. And also, we've within the team intimate understanding and knowledge of the Energy Performance Certificate system in Ireland, and how that's been a key foundation block for the implementation of the different funding programs I've mentioned before, but also the creation and the development of Retrokit as a platform. And that, we believe, is exemplary at European level, not from just Retrokit point of view, obviously, but from what national governments and local governments have done in that regard. And so we can bring that experience and that expertise to other European countries as part of our offering as well. Next slide, please, which is the last.